This video will show you how to replace your factory ejector on your Beretta 390 or 391 with a new ejector which will dramatically improve your catch rate with your multi-catch. Although these guns are computer machined, there is some variation from gun to gun. In addition, as the gun ages and more rounds go through it, the bolt speed tends to increase and it tends to overpower the ejector over time. In addition, the ejector spring will fatigue over time, and as a result, the shells don't eject as consistently as they should. In order to do the modification, you want your bolt removed from your gun. The hammer should be cocked, safety on, bolts removed, the operating rod sleeve has been removed, and the barrel has been reattached to the gun with the fore-end nut firmly in place. You want the barrel attached firmly to the gun to replace your ejector. Next, you take a towel or whatever and put it underneath the wrist area of your stock, the grip area. That's to elevate the gun slightly off the surface of that the gun is resting on. Take the punch which has been supplied and insert it through the operating handle slot into the hole on the opposite side of the receiver that the ejector retaining pin sits in. You can see it clearly on the opposite side of the receiver, and you want the end of the punch to go through the operating handle slot and into that hole. Then take a hammer, gently tap it out, remove the punch, and the pin will be laying on the surface underneath. Next, loosen the fore-end nut completely, take it off the gun, and as you do so, the ejector will tend to push the barrel forward. If you didn't have the barrel attached to the gun when you pulled that punch out of the receiver, the ejector would have shot out the front of the receiver and you would have had a tough time finding it. So it's a good idea to use the barrel as an aid in doing this modification. The ejector will tend to push the barrel forward. When you do that, simply slide the barrel forward, reach in with a pair of tweezers. Bent nose tweezers are real handy for this process. Reach in, grab the ejector, slide it forward. There's the factory ejector, and set it aside. Next, take the punch which has been supplied and insert it into the pocket that you just removed the ejector from, and try and snag the ejector spring. Can be tough to do, but if you keep at it, you'll get it. Once you've got this spring started forward, reach in with the tweezers, and before pulling out completely, twist the spring a little bit. And what this will do, it will tend to snag the operating spring guide and hopefully pull that out with it. Well, that didn't happen on this occasion, but there's the ejector spring. Set that aside. Next, you want to take the punch again and see if you can reach in and snag the ejector spring guide. It may be difficult. What you can do though is slide the barrel all the way off, tip your gun up, and tap it. And that should, with a little luck, let the ejector spring guide slide forward enough so that you can grab it with the tweezers. Remove that from the gun and set that aside. Once you've got the ejector assembly out, it's a good idea to take a can of canned air or your favorite aerosol solvent with a tube in the nozzle and stick it in the ejector pocket and spray it clean. It's not unusual for there to be metal shavings at the bottom of that pocket left over from the machining process when the gun was manufactured. If you have trouble getting your ejector spring and ejector spring guide out, that's probably why. It's full of gunk and grime and probably some metal shavings from the manufacturing process. So it's a good idea when you do this to take advantage of it and clean that pocket out thoroughly. Once you've done that, you take the nylon rod which has been supplied with your new ejector. Again, take the tweezers, slide it into the ejector pocket. Take your new ejector, which as you can see is a little bit longer than the factory ejector, and in fact it extends up and over the barrel tang a little bit. So take the new ejector and install that in the ejector pocket as well. Next, reattach your barrel, and this is important because by doing that you will help ensure that the new ejector is properly aligned to receive that ejector retaining pin when you put it back in. You also want to make sure that you've got a little bit of play in the ejector. It should wiggle up and down a little bit. You don't want the new ejector wedged in there. If it doesn't wiggle just a little bit, take it out, sand down the end of the nylon rod or trim it down a little bit until you have it so that there's a little bit of play there. You do not want the new ejector wedged in place. There should be a little bit of play. Reattach the barrel, put the fore-end nut back on. Again, this is important so that the new ejector lines up with the hole to receive that ejector retaining pin. Turn the gun over. Take the ejector retaining pin. Again, tweezers come in real handy for this, bent nose tweezers. Put it in the hole. Tap it gently into place. And that's essentially the ejector modification process. What that does is moves the rotation point of the ejected shell farther forward. Because it's longer and extends over the barrel tang, and because it doesn't compress anymore, it moves that rotation point about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch farther forward. If you were having trouble before, it was probably because with the factory ejector and spring setup, very often the shell slams into the back of the ejection port, and instead of rolling out at a nice 90-degree angle, it kicks forward and actually kind of like flips in the ejection port. But with this modification, the rotation point has been moved forward and the shell will roll nicely out the back of the ejection port without slamming into it. When it hits the back of the ejection port, that makes it a very random and inconsistent process from shell to shell, and that's probably why you were having problems with your catch rate. So with this, you'll get a very consistent rollout out of the back of the ejection port. And without a shell catcher installed, your shells will eject farther, but that's only because they're not slamming into the back of the ejection port. It's a nice, clean rollout out the back of the ejection port. And that should greatly improve your catch rate if you were having problems. If you weren't, that's great. But if you were, this ejector modification should greatly improve your success. That's essentially it. It's a completely and easily reversible process. If you want to go back to your factory setup, you just reverse what you just saw. It's easily done, doesn't take much time or any special tools. Well, the only special tool you need is the one we give you, which is this punch. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and hope this helps your shell catch rate. Thank you very much.